The sun rose over a quiet Virginia suburb, painting the streets in soft golden light. Birds chirped as children walked to school, neighbors exchanged brief greetings over white picket fences, and the faint hum of cars on the highway filled the morning air. In the middle of it all walked Maya Brooks, holding her son Evan's small hand in hers. At first glance, she was every bit the ordinary mother, soft-spoken, polite, and careful. Her brown hair framed her face neatly. Her jeans and a simple blouse were unremarkable, and her smile radiated the warmth of someone entirely devoted to her child. Evan, 9 years old, bounced along beside her, backpack swinging, his small sneakers scuffing the pavement. "Mom, look, I can hop this curb without falling," he shouted, pride in his voice. Maya chuckled, squeezing his hand. "I know you can, Evan, but maybe keep your feet on the ground until we get home, okay?" He grinned, ignoring her advice, and hopped anyway, landing perfectly on the asphalt. From the corner of her eye, Maya noticed a black SUV idling across the street. Its windows were tinted dark, and it lingered in a way that made her skin prickle. She forced a casual smile at Evan, though her pulse quickened. "Nothing to worry about," she said softly, bending down to brush a strand of hair from his face. But her eyes, trained to detect even the slightest threat, lingered on the vehicle. There was nothing overtly suspicious about the SUV, yet instinct screamed at her that something wasn't right. Maya had learned long ago to trust that instinct. Most people thought of her as a quiet, ordinary woman. They didn't know her past, that she had once been trained as one of the most elite operators in the world, a Navy SEAL. The discipline, endurance, and vigilance she had honed over years in the military now blended seamlessly into everyday life. In this suburban setting, her skills were invisible, wrapped carefully in the guise of a normal mother. But beneath the calm exterior, Maya's senses were sharp, alert, and ready. "Mom, why are you looking at that car like that?" Evan asked, tugging at her sleeve. His small face, framed by dark curls, was curious but unafraid. Maya crouched to his level, brushing her fingers across his cheek. "It's just someone driving by, sweetie. Nothing to worry about. Now let's get inside the store before we're late." She gave him a smile that was both reassuring and a little playful, though her heart beat faster beneath it. Evan nodded, satisfied, and skipped ahead toward the grocery store entrance. The parking lot was surprisingly empty for a Saturday morning, except for a few scattered cars and the SUV that now seemed to have moved closer. Maya carried the grocery bags carefully, keeping Evan close. Every movement was deliberate, a slight adjustment of her shoulders, a subtle shift in weight, an eye scanning exits and open paths. A lifetime of training had taught her to be aware of her surroundings, and even here in the calmest of suburban settings, she could not let her guard down. Evan raced ahead, grabbing a small shopping cart and pretending it was a race car. "Mom, catch me," he called, laughing. Maya allowed herself a quiet chuckle. She loved these moments, the innocence of her son, the normalcy of life she fought so hard to preserve. But that feeling of unease lingered, coiling in her stomach like a silent warning. The SUV's engine hummed faintly, drawing her gaze once more. The driver had not moved. They were waiting, and Maya knew that waiting often meant intention. Inside the store, she tried to focus on the mundane, picking vegetables, checking expiration dates, and making a mental list of what needed to be bought. Yet even here, Maya's awareness never wavered. The reflective surface of a freezer door caught her eye, revealing not just her reflection but the shadow of movement behind her, a man standing in the aisle, watching her with a keen, calculating gaze. Maya's training kicked in, posture straightened, shoulders squared, breaths measured. She knew exactly how to handle a situation like this, though she hoped she wouldn't have to. Evan, oblivious to the tension, reached for a box of cereal. "Mom, can we get this one?" he asked cheerfully. Maya smiled, kneeling down to his level. "Sure, that one looks good. Just be careful grabbing it, okay?" He nodded enthusiastically, and she returned to scanning the store, her instincts quietly mapping escape routes, potential hazards, and points of advantage. Every detail mattered because experience had taught her that danger often arrived when least expected. A subtle sound, the slide of a shoe on tile, made her head turn. Outside, the SUV had parked closer to the entrance. 3 men stepped out. Their movements were deliberate, confident, and coordinated. They walked with a purpose that instantly triggered alarm bells in Maya's mind. Her son, holding his box of cereal, still hadn't noticed. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder, guiding him toward the back of the store. Maya took a deep breath. Her calm exterior masked the readiness within. For a split second, she allowed herself a flashback. Grueling SEAL training exercises, missions executed under fire, the sensation of life and death decisions made in moments. She had survived things most could never imagine. And now, for the first time in years, she felt that old rush of adrenaline, not for glory, not for orders, but for the life of her child. As the men approached the sliding doors, their expressions dark, Maya adjusted her grip on Evan's hand. "Stay calm, Evan," she whispered. "Just stay close to me." Her mind moved faster than ever, calculating options, analyzing movements, and preparing for whatever came next. What had begun as a quiet, ordinary Saturday morning in suburbia was about to become the moment where her past collided with her present, and she was ready. The first man's eyes locked onto hers as he pushed through the entrance, his intentions unmistakable. And in that moment, Maya Brooks ceased to be just a mother. She became the guardian, the protector, and the warrior her son had no idea existed. Every instinct, every skill honed over years of life and death training, surged to the forefront. The peaceful morning was over. The storm had arrived. The sliding doors of the grocery store hissed open, and Maya felt a chill run down her spine. 3 men stepped inside, their eyes scanning the aisles with the precision of trained predators. They moved as a team, coordinated, confident, and utterly unafraid. Maya's grip tightened on Evan's small hand as her mind raced through every scenario she had ever prepared for. Years of Navy SEAL training flashed in her memory, controlling the threat, shielding the vulnerable, exploiting weaknesses. She had survived ambushes in jungles, deserts, and foreign cities, but nothing had prepared her for the vulnerability of a suburban grocery store in broad daylight. The tallest of the men, with a scar running down his cheek, took a deliberate step forward. "Come with us," he said, his voice calm but edged with menace. "Now." His tone left no room for discussion, no trace of hesitation. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, studying him. A mother might seem ordinary, but she had been trained to read intentions in micro-expressions, body tension, and eye contact. This man's stance, the set of his shoulders, the subtle twitch in his left hand, all signs pointed to imminent violence if she didn't act. Evan, clutching his cereal box, looked up at her. "Mom, they're scary," he whispered. Maya knelt down to his level, brushing his hair from his forehead. "It's okay, Evan. I've got you," she said softly, her voice calm, measured, but carrying a weight that made him trust her completely. He nodded, hiding behind her as she slowly straightened. The attacker's confidence seemed almost palpable until Maya's eyes locked onto them. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The second man, broad-shouldered and muscular, advanced from the side. Maya subtly shifted her stance, planting her feet in the exact position she had practiced countless times during training exercises. Her movements were deliberate, almost imperceptible, designed to keep Evan protected while preparing herself for any possible outcome. Every second mattered. A single wrong move could put her son in danger. She forced her breathing steady, her mind calculating angles, distances, and the timing required to neutralize a threat without escalation. The third man moved closer to the entrance, his hand brushing against his jacket pocket. Maya caught the motion instantly. Her instincts screamed that a weapon might be involved. She subtly adjusted her position, shielding Evan behind her. "Stay behind me," she whispered. The words were simple, but they carried authority, the kind that only comes from someone who has faced death and survived it. Evan obeyed without question, his small frame pressed safely against her side. Then, without warning, the tallest man lunged. His intention was clear: intimidate and overpower. Maya reacted with lightning speed. Years of muscle memory took over. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, and twisted his arm behind his back in a joint lock. A sharp crack sounded, enough to incapacitate without permanent damage. The man staggered, startled by the precision of her strike. He had expected a terrified civilian, not a trained SEAL. The second man charged. Maya sidestepped again, pivoting with the exact efficiency of her combat training. A swift strike to his midsection doubled him over. Then with a controlled movement she pushed him off balance and onto the floor. His confidence shattered in an instant. He scrambled, trying to recover, but she anticipated every move, countering before he could react. Maya's focus was absolute. Every thought revolved around protecting Evan while neutralizing the threat. She didn't panic. She didn't hesitate. Evan's eyes were wide as he watched the fight unfold. He had never seen his mother like this, fierce, precise, and unrelenting. There was no fear in her movements, only control. "Mom, you're amazing," he whispered, almost in awe. Maya spared a brief glance at him, her expression softening for a fraction of a second. Then her attention snapped back to the attackers. The third man, realizing his comrades were incapacitated, reached for something at his waist, a gun. Maya's reaction was instantaneous. She grabbed his wrist mid-motion, twisting it upward and forcing him off balance. The gun clattered to the ground, skidding across the tile floor. The store's few other shoppers gasped and moved back, unsure whether to intervene. Maya didn't stop. She pinned the third man, pressing him to the floor with precise force, and her voice cut through the chaos. "Stay down, or it ends badly for all of you." The authority in her voice, calm yet undeniably lethal, froze the attackers. For a moment, silence filled the store, broken only by the heavy breathing of the men on the floor and Maya's measured exhalation. The shoppers were frozen, phones raised, capturing a scene that defied belief. A mother, standing over 3 adult men, had defeated them with skill that seemed almost unreal. And yet to Maya, it was simply instinct, discipline, and training in action. The attackers' confidence had vanished. They realized too late that they had underestimated her. Her movements, her control, and her calm dominance screamed experience, but they couldn't yet see the full picture. Maya's calm exterior masked the storm beneath, the lifetime of training, missions, and survival instincts that had forged her into someone capable of handling the impossible. Evan, still pressed close to her side, whispered, "Mom, they're scary, but you're scarier." Maya smiled briefly, squeezing his hand. "And I'll always keep you safe," she said, her voice soft but resolute. In that moment, Evan understood that his mother was more than just a parent. She was a protector, a warrior, and someone who would stop at nothing to defend him. The tallest man muttered under his breath, his eyes wide with recognition. He glimpsed a small, partially visible tattoo on Maya's forearm, a silver trident, unmistakable to anyone who knew its significance. His breath caught. "A SEAL," he whispered, terror replacing his previous arrogance. The other 2 men glanced at him, realizing the truth. This was no ordinary woman. They had targeted someone with deadly training, someone who had faced enemies far more dangerous than themselves. Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. The attackers' plan had failed before it even began. They were trapped in a scenario they could not control, facing a woman who could end the situation with precision and calm that bordered on terrifying. Her focus remained entirely on Evan, ensuring his safety while keeping the men immobilized until authorities could arrive. The store doors slid open behind her as a few curious bystanders called 911. Maya kept her posture relaxed but ready, every movement deliberate. She knew help was coming, but she also knew the attackers would attempt escape if given the slightest opportunity. Her mind raced through contingencies. If they tried to run, she would pursue. If they resisted, she would neutralize them further. Every possibility had been rehearsed, and now it was coming to life in the most real and dangerous way possible. In the brief moments before the police arrived, Maya looked down at Evan. His eyes were wide, filled with admiration and awe, but also trust. She knelt and whispered in his ear, "You did everything right, staying calm and staying close. I'm proud of you." Evan hugged her tightly, feeling safer than he ever had, knowing that his mother's skills extended far beyond anything he could comprehend. In that suburban grocery store, the quiet morning had transformed into a moment of raw, breathtaking reality. The confrontation had ended for now, but Maya knew this was only the beginning. Whoever had sent these men would not stop here. She had protected her son today, but tomorrow might demand more. As she scanned the parking lot, still alert despite the adrenaline surge fading, she felt a familiar resolve harden within her. She would protect Evan, no matter what, and nothing would stop her. The ordinary morning was gone. The mother the world knew, calm, polite, unassuming, had vanished. In her place stood a warrior, a protector, a Navy SEAL ready to face any threat that dared cross her path. And as Evan clung to her side, the lesson became clear. In this quiet suburban town, his mother was unstoppable. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store flickered slightly overhead, but Maya's focus was absolute. Her calm exterior masked a storm of precise calculation. Every movement she made was deliberate, honed through years of intense Navy SEAL training. She had faced ambushes in foreign deserts, jungles, and hostile urban zones, and she had always survived. But this was different. This was her son, Evan, standing just behind her, and any threat to him would be met with the full force of everything she had learned in a life devoted to survival, protection, and discipline. The tallest man struggled to his knees, his earlier confidence shattered. He glanced at his companions, panic flickering across his face. Maya didn't hesitate. With a swift, fluid motion, she struck his shoulder, sending him sprawling back onto the tile floor. He cried out, clutching his arm. The sound echoed in the near-empty store, drawing startled looks from a few remaining shoppers, but Maya ignored them. Her focus was on neutralizing the threat quickly and efficiently. The second man attempted to rise, wincing from the blow she had delivered moments before. Maya anticipated his movement instantly. She pivoted, ducking a wild punch, and used his own momentum against him, spinning him to the ground with a judo throw she had performed countless times in training. He hit the floor hard, gasping for breath, realizing he had no idea how skilled his opponent really was. Maya's movements were precise, almost artistic, every action calculated to subdue, not maim, but there was an unmistakable edge of lethal capability behind every strike. Evan's eyes were wide with a mixture of awe and fear. He had never seen his mother move like this, strong, confident, and terrifyingly capable. Yet in the midst of chaos, there was also a calm reassurance. He trusted her completely, a trust forged through countless quiet moments of love and care, now reinforced by the undeniable proof of her skill. "Mom, you're amazing," he whispered, his voice trembling. Maya spared him a brief glance, her lips curving into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. The third man, realizing his companions had been incapacitated, scrambled to the floor. His hand brushed against something at his belt. Maya's trained eyes caught the subtle movement instantly. She shifted her stance, guiding Evan just slightly behind her, and her hand moved with lightning speed. In a single fluid motion, she intercepted the man's wrist and twisted it upward. The object, a small pistol, clattered to the floor, skidding across the linoleum. The man froze, panic replacing the arrogance he had carried in moments before. Maya's voice, calm yet authoritative, cut through the tension like steel. "Stay down or this ends badly for all of you." The tone alone carried the weight of a lifetime of combat experience. The three men, now fully aware that they were outmatched, froze in place. Their plan had failed spectacularly. The predator had become the prey, and they were unprepared for the predator's skill. Outside, the faint wail of sirens began to approach. Maya's mind acknowledged it but didn't relax. The attackers were not yet fully subdued, and law enforcement would take time to arrive. Every instinct she had honed in life-or-death situations kicked into overdrive. Her eyes flicked between the men, the exits, and her son, calculating every angle, every potential threat, every contingency. Her body moved with the precision of someone who had been trained to survive under impossible circumstances. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. She remembered missions in the Middle East, operations where one mistake meant death for her and her team. The training, the drills, the relentless conditioning, all of it had prepared her for this. And now, in the middle of a quiet suburban grocery store, it was proving invaluable once more. The attackers were no longer threatening shadows. They were tangible targets, and Maya's mastery of her body, her mind, and her environment gave her complete control. The tallest attacker, trembling, muttered a question that froze Maya's attention. "You were one of them." His voice was barely audible, filled with terror. Maya didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke louder than words. The partially visible tattoo on her forearm, a silver trident, had already revealed enough. Any trained eye would know that she was a Navy SEAL, one of the most elite and deadly forces in the world. The men's expressions shifted from disbelief to outright fear. They had chosen their target poorly. Evan, still clutching his cereal box, watched the scene unfold. He had never seen his mother like this, not as the gentle, caring woman who packed his lunch, but as the warrior, the protector, the unstoppable force who could neutralize threats in seconds. He pressed close to her side, feeling the unmistakable confidence radiating from her. "Mom, you're scarier than they are," he whispered. Maya's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "And that's why you stay close to me," she said softly. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, echoing through the parking lot and inside the store. Maya didn't relax, even as the men remained pinned or incapacitated on the floor. She knew that whatever had sent these attackers would not be satisfied with just one failed attempt. They would return. And when they did, she needed to be ready. Her mind was already working ahead, replaying the scenario, calculating responses, and preparing for potential escalation. One of the attackers, a man with a scar across his cheek, finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Commander, Reyes sent us," he said, fear thick in his tone. Maya's expression hardened. Reyes. She remembered him immediately, the mastermind of a criminal network she had dismantled years ago. He had thought himself imprisoned for life. Yet here in the suburbs, his shadow had found its way back into her life. And he had sent these men to take her, not knowing that he was stepping into the territory of someone who had survived far worse. Maya knelt briefly beside Evan, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "You did exactly what I told you, Evan," she whispered. "Staying calm, staying close. I'm proud of you." His small chest rose and fell rapidly as he absorbed the magnitude of what had just happened. He was safe for now because his mother was more than just a mother. She was a warrior, disciplined, trained, and lethal when required. The remaining attackers were still conscious, though terrified. They realized the full scale of their mistake. They had chosen the wrong target, underestimated her skill, and now they were at her mercy. They had expected a frightened civilian, someone easy to manipulate or intimidate. Instead, they were met with a woman who could have dismantled an entire combat unit single-handedly. Every second they remained in her presence reminded them of that fact. As the sirens grew louder, Maya's attention remained razor-sharp. She knew the police would arrive soon, but she didn't assume safety. She positioned herself slightly in front of Evan, ensuring he was shielded from any last-ditch movements the men might attempt. Her eyes scanned exits, aisles, and reflections in the shiny surfaces of the store, searching for any threats that might have been overlooked. Years of high-stakes experience made her aware that danger often arrived where it was least expected. Finally, the sound of police radios crackling through the doors signaled the arrival of law enforcement. Officers entered the store cautiously, hands on their weapons, taking in the scene. They froze briefly, trying to process what had happened. 3 men incapacitated, a mother standing calmly over them, and a child safe in her arms. Detective Alan Ford was among them. His trained eyes immediately recognized the discipline, control, and precision in her stance. He had seen soldiers in combat, but rarely civilians with that level of skill. Maya's voice remained calm and authoritative. "I've secured the men. My son is safe. They attempted to abduct him," she said plainly. Ford approached slowly, acknowledging her control of the situation without interference. He could see it clearly. This was not a typical civilian. This was a trained operative, someone capable of extraordinary feats, and she had demonstrated that skill flawlessly in the middle of a suburban grocery store. Evan looked up at Maya, his trust absolute. "You saved me," he whispered. Maya smiled, brushing his hair back. "I always will," she said softly. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and the arrival of police, it was clear. Maya Brooks was no ordinary mother. She was a protector, a warrior, and a force that even the most dangerous criminals underestimated at their peril. The grocery store hummed with the muted sound of the refrigerator units, the faint echo of police radios, and the panicked breathing of the incapacitated men. Maya Brooks stood perfectly still, her hand resting lightly on Evan's shoulder. Her eyes never left the three attackers, who now sprawled on the floor, their earlier bravado entirely vanished. Every instinct in her body remained alert, every muscle primed for action. She was calm, but inside, her mind raced through contingencies. Her son's safety depended on it. The tallest man, still clutching his arm from the joint lock she had applied, tried to regain some composure. Panic flickered in his eyes, mingling with disbelief. "A seal," he stammered, his voice barely audible, pointing toward a small silver emblem partially visible on Maya's forearm. A tattoo, a trident, the insignia of the United States Navy SEALs. Recognition dawned slowly, like the creeping light of dawn. No, no, it can't be. The other two men glanced at each other, shock replacing arrogance. Their earlier confidence, the very thing that had carried them into the grocery store so confidently, evaporated instantly. Fear replaced it. They had believed they were dealing with an ordinary civilian, someone they could intimidate, perhaps even control. Instead, they faced a woman whose skill and experience made them question every decision that had brought them here. Maya didn't answer the question. She didn't have to. The tattoo alone, partially revealed beneath the edge of her sleeve, spoke volumes. The trident symbolized a lifetime of elite military training, survival against impossible odds, and missions that most people couldn't imagine. Even someone familiar with combat could recognize its significance instantly. These men, who had thought themselves predators, now realized they were in the presence of a predator far beyond their reckoning. Evan, pressed close to his mother's side, watched the interaction with wide eyes. The grocery store had transformed from a mundane place of Saturday errands into a battlefield, one in which his mother had complete control. He had seen her defend him, but he hadn't understood the scale of her capability until now. The fear in the men's eyes reflected back to him the depth of her training, something ordinary civilians couldn't comprehend. Yet, despite the tension, he felt safe. He trusted her absolutely. The tallest attacker's lips trembled. We didn't know," he muttered. We were sent." His words faltered as he glanced again at the tattoo. The trident wasn't just a symbol, it was a warning. And now, for the first time, the men understood that they had underestimated someone capable of far more than they could handle. Maya shifted subtly, keeping Evan safely behind her, her eyes sweeping the store for any additional threats. The situation was under control, but she knew better than to relax entirely. Anyone willing to attempt an abduction in broad daylight was unlikely to stop without some form of escalation. Her experience told her that danger often arrived in layers, and she had to anticipate the next move before it happened. Her thoughts briefly returned to her years in the Navy SEALs, to the missions that had defined her life. The trident was more than a tattoo. It was a reminder of a world she had left behind, a past full of danger, secrecy, and death. She had trained her body and mind to react instantly, to make decisions in moments that could mean life or death. Today, all that training had returned, activated by a threat to the one thing she cherished most, her son. The second man, still groaning from her judo throw, whispered in disbelief, How can someone like you live quietly like this?" Maya's eyes met his, steady, unyielding. She didn't answer. Her silence carried authority. She didn't need to explain herself. The lesson had been made clear. They had misjudged her entirely. The world had assumed she was an ordinary mother, but they had learned the harsh truth. The third attacker, trembling and pale, glanced around, finally seeing the reality of their situation. Their coordinated assault had failed completely. They were unarmed, restrained by the psychological weight of facing someone far beyond their experience. Every muscle in Maya's body remained coiled, ready to react if they tried any sudden movement. She was a master of control, using minimal force to neutralize threats while protecting Evan. Her every instinct screamed vigilance, ensuring no harm would come to her son. Maya's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the attacker's escalating panic. Her movements, though subtle, were purposeful, a slight shift in weight, a minor adjustment in stance, an imperceptible positioning of her hands, all designed to maintain dominance without unnecessary violence. Her eyes scanned exits, aisles, and reflective surfaces, anticipating the next potential threat. She understood that fear alone could immobilize them, and she allowed it to take hold fully. Outside, the sound of police sirens drew closer, echoing through the store's automatic doors. Maya knew their arrival would change the dynamic, but she remained vigilant. Police presence could be unpredictable. Inexperienced officers might misread the scene. She kept Evan safely behind her, ready to intervene if anyone misstepped. Her control of the situation was total, a combination of skill, discipline, and experience honed through years of demanding service. The tallest man whispered a name under his breath, almost as if speaking it would invoke fear into reality. Commander Reyes, the words made Maya's expression darken. Reyes. She remembered him immediately, the mastermind behind a criminal network she had dismantled years ago. She had believed him imprisoned, neutralized, removed from the world. Yet here, through the shadows of her past, his influence had found its way back, sending these men as a warning or perhaps a test. Maya's mind raced, recalling every detail she knew about Reyes, his methods, his ruthlessness, his unpredictability. These men had been sent to retrieve her, likely under orders that presumed she was an ordinary civilian. They had misjudged her entirely. And now they were learning too late that targeting a trained Navy SEAL, a woman who had survived missions designed to kill, was a mistake with potentially deadly consequences. Evan tugged at her sleeve, sensing the intensity in her posture. "Mom, are we safe?" he asked quietly. Maya knelt briefly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "For now," she whispered, "but we always have to be careful." Her eyes flicked back to the attackers, who now avoided her gaze, understanding instinctively that any further aggression would be met with immediate, decisive action. The grocery store had become a theater of control. The attackers were frozen, immobilized by fear and respect. They had underestimated the quiet woman in the blouse and jeans, unaware that she had faced death and survived, that she had protected countless others in her previous life. The trident on her forearm was more than a symbol. It was a declaration of power, experience, and lethal skill. As the sirens neared, Maya's thoughts shifted briefly to the next steps. The attackers had revealed a name, Reyes, confirming that this was not a random assault but a targeted operation. She needed to remain vigilant. Her son's safety depended not just on her physical prowess but on her ability to anticipate what would come next. She would protect him, no matter what, and she was already preparing for the inevitable continuation of this threat. The men, now fully aware of her identity, remained quiet. Their fear was palpable. Maya's presence dominated the space, and every second reinforced the lesson they had learned too late. She was not someone to underestimate. She had trained, fought, and survived at the highest levels. Today, that training had protected her son and revealed a truth that these men would not forget. Maya glanced down at Evan one last time, drawing him close. "You did everything right, Evan," she whispered. "Always stay close, always stay calm. That's how we survive." He nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. In the span of minutes, his world had shifted, revealing his mother as more than just a caregiver. She was a warrior, a protector, and someone capable of extraordinary feats. Outside, the sirens grew louder, signaling that help would arrive soon. But Maya knew that the battle was not yet over. Whoever had sent these men would not stop here. Reyes' reach extended far beyond what anyone in this quiet suburb could imagine. The attackers, incapacitated and terrified, were only the first ripple in a larger storm. And in that moment, Maya Brooks, mother and Navy SEAL, understood that her life, once thought ordinary, had collided irrevocably with the past. The trident on her forearm gleamed subtly in the store's fluorescent light, a warning, a promise, and a declaration. Those who sought to challenge her would learn that she was far more dangerous than they could ever comprehend. And for Evan, she would face anything, endure anything, and survive anything. The quiet grocery store had transformed into the scene of a revelation. A mother's past, once hidden, had been revealed, and it carried a power that no ordinary criminal could withstand. Maya Brooks had survived the impossible before, and she would do it again for her son and for herself. The wail of police sirens grew louder, echoing through the quiet suburban streets and reverberating inside the grocery store. Maya kept a steady hand on Evan's shoulder, her body poised like a predator still fully aware of its surroundings. The three attackers lay incapacitated, but she knew better than to let her guard down. She had learned the hard way that danger often came in waves. Today had proven that even in a seemingly peaceful suburb, the past could find her. Her son's safety depended on her vigilance, and she could not afford a single lapse. The store doors slid open with a hiss, and several police officers entered cautiously, weapons drawn. Their eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene: three men lying on the floor, a mother standing over them, and a young boy pressed safely at her side. A collective murmur ran through the officers. The scene did not match their expectations. Nothing about it suggested an ordinary abduction. One officer muttered under his breath, "What the hell happened here?" Detective Alan Ford, a seasoned investigator with years of experience in violent crimes and organized networks, stepped forward. He was tall, imposing, and cautious, trained to read subtle cues and detect threats instantly. As he surveyed the scene, his gaze fell on Maya. There was something about her posture, the calm control in her eyes, and the way she positioned herself between her son and the incapacitated men that told him she was no ordinary civilian. His instincts screamed experience. This woman had been trained, highly trained, in ways most people could not comprehend. Maya met his gaze evenly, her voice calm and measured. "The men attempted to abduct my son," she explained. "They are restrained. He is safe. I suggest you handle them carefully." Her tone left no room for argument, only acknowledgement. Ford studied her carefully, noting the precision in her speech, the subtle awareness in her stance. This was someone accustomed to control, someone who had faced danger countless times before. Her calmness wasn't fear, it was mastery. Evan clutched his cereal box tightly, peeking around his mother's side. He watched the police with cautious curiosity, yet his trust in Maya was absolute. She had protected him, neutralized three dangerous men with ease, and now stood unwavering in the presence of armed officers. The sight of her competence reassured him, though it also introduced a quiet awe. The woman he had always known as his mom was revealed to be a force beyond comprehension. Detective Ford approached cautiously, lowering his weapon slightly but maintaining a defensive stance. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but cautious, "can you explain exactly what happened here?" Maya's eyes swept the room one last time, ensuring the men could not rise or attack. Then she responded, "They tried to take my son. I protected him. They underestimated me. That's all you need to know." Her words were calm, concise, and delivered with an authority that left no room for doubt. Ford studied her closely. He had dealt with plenty of criminals, victims, and civilians, but this was different. The precision in her movements, the control of the scene, and the confidence radiating from her made it clear. She had faced life-or-death situations before. He noted the subtle trident tattoo partially visible on her forearm. It was a small emblem, but he recognized it instantly. She was a Navy SEAL, someone trained for the most extreme situations imaginable. One of the officers approached the attackers cautiously, securing their arms behind their backs. The men glared up at Maya, fear clear in their eyes. They were beginning to grasp the full extent of their mistake. Not only had they underestimated her physical ability, but they were also discovering the truth of her past. Maya had trained for life-threatening missions that had honed her body, mind, and instincts beyond ordinary comprehension. The grocery store floor, once mundane, had become a proving ground for her lethal expertise. Maya's eyes flicked to the tallest attacker, whose voice trembled as he muttered again, "Commander, Reyes sent us." Her expression hardened at the mention of the name. Reyes, the man was a ghost from her past, a criminal mastermind she had dismantled years ago during her time with the SEALs. She had thought him neutralized, imprisoned, removed from the world. And now the reach of his shadow had found her, sending these men to test her, intimidate her, or worse. Ford observed the interaction silently, sensing the tension between Maya and the captured men. This wasn't merely a failed abduction. It was the beginning of a larger story, one that had roots in criminal networks and covert operations far beyond suburban life. He realized that the woman before him was more than capable of handling threats far greater than the ones she had just neutralized. His respect was instant, tempered with caution. Maya knelt slightly, bringing her face level with Evan. "Stay close to me," she whispered. "Always pay attention. Always stay calm." He nodded obediently, absorbing the gravity of the lesson. In moments, he had learned more about vigilance, control, and courage than most adults ever experienced. For him, today had been both terrifying and enlightening. His mother was not just his protector, she was an unstoppable force. Ford finally spoke, breaking the silence. "Ma'am, you handled this remarkably. Are you injured? Is your son hurt?" Maya shook her head, maintaining her calm composure. "No injuries, he is fine. The attackers are restrained. Their fate is in your hands now." She gestured subtly toward the officers who had moved in to secure the men. Her control of the scene was absolute. She had guided the police without giving up authority, ensuring no one, not the attackers, not her son, not the officers, made a misstep. Evan peeked from behind his mother as one of the attackers muttered, She's a seal." The words hung in the air. Fear, disbelief, and respect intermingled in the eyes of the men on the floor. They had assumed dominance, only to realize that they had stepped into the presence of a trained operative, someone whose experience far exceeded anything they had encountered. Their failed plan had become a lesson in humility and fear. Outside, the sirens had brought reinforcements. Officers began taking statements from shocked shoppers who had witnessed the confrontation. Phones recorded the scene, social media ready, though no one could fully comprehend the significance of what they had just seen. Maya remained focused, shielding Evan, ensuring that the unfolding chaos didn't compromise safety. Her mind already considered the next steps. Ray's name had surfaced, revealing that this incident was likely part of a larger, ongoing threat. Ford finally lowered his weapon fully, approaching Maya with cautious respect. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand just how serious this is," he said. "If these men were sent by someone you know, we may be dealing with a bigger operation." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, her jaw tightening. "I know exactly what it is," she said. Her voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of experience, authority, and unflinching resolve. "And I will ensure my son is safe, no matter what comes next." Evan, sensing the seriousness of the moment, hugged his mother tightly. Maya's hand rested on his back, grounding him even as her mind raced. This was no longer a simple abduction attempt. The attackers had revealed the name of a criminal mastermind from her past, and she knew that today's confrontation was only the beginning. Ray's would not stop until he achieved his goal. Maya's focus shifted seamlessly from immediate defense to long-term strategy. As the police began securing the store, Maya stayed alert. Every movement, every glance, every minor shift in the attacker's body language was noted. She had survived countless missions where a single miscalculation could mean death. She would not allow history to repeat itself, not with Evan involved. Her training, once buried beneath civilian life, had resurfaced fully, and she would act decisively if the situation escalated. The store, now partially cleared, hummed with the quiet tension of uncertainty. Officers led the men to waiting squad cars. Shoppers whispered, some in awe, others in fear. Maya kept Evan close, reassuring him silently with her posture and calm, measured breathing. The lesson was clear. The past was never truly gone, and vigilance was the key to survival. For Maya, the arrival of law enforcement was only a temporary reprieve. She knew that Ray's shadow loomed larger than the three men they had just faced. And as Detective Ford observed her, he realized that the woman before him was more than just a mother. She was a warrior, disciplined, capable, and unflinchingly deadly when her family was threatened. Today had been a warning to those who underestimated her. Tomorrow would require preparation. The ordinary life she had tried to build was now inseparable from the legacy of her past, a past that had found its way back into the present, with dangers that demanded vigilance, strategy, and the full measure of her skill. Maya looked down at Evan one last time, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next," she whispered. "I promise." His small hand found hers, gripping tightly, trusting her completely. Outside, the sirens faded slightly, but the storm had only just begun. The police had secured the attackers and transported them to waiting squad cars, sirens fading into the distance. But for Maya Brooks, the momentary relief was fleeting. Her son, Evan, clutched her hand tightly, eyes wide with lingering awe and curiosity. He had witnessed something extraordinary, the unveiling of a side of his mother he had never known. Yet Maya could not afford even a moment of complacency. The name Ray still lingered in her mind, a dark echo of a past she had hoped was behind her. Ray's, the criminal mastermind she had dismantled years ago. He had thought himself neutralized, imprisoned, removed from the world. But now he had returned, sending his operatives into a quiet suburban neighborhood. The audacity of the attack was staggering, yet it was no surprise to Maya. Criminals like Ray's did not simply vanish. They waited, plotted, and exploited any opening to regain influence. And she had unknowingly provided one by returning to civilian life. Detective Alan Ford approached, his expression serious but respectful. "Ma'am," he began, lowering his voice slightly, "the men you neutralized are connected to a network tied to Commander Ray's. He's been linked to kidnappings, illegal arms deals, and international operations. If he's sending people after you, we could be looking at something much larger." Maya nodded, her jaw tightening. She had anticipated this. Ray's reach extended far beyond what anyone could easily track. The grocery store incident was likely just the first strike, a test to see how capable she still was, a warning meant to intimidate. Evan tugged gently at her sleeve, sensing the tension but not fully understanding its magnitude. "Mom, are they gone?" he asked. Maya knelt slightly, brushing his hair from his forehead. "For now," she whispered. "But we have to be ready. Sometimes danger doesn't end just because the immediate threat is gone." His small eyes widened, absorbing the weight of her words. She had shielded him physically moments ago, but now she was preparing him mentally, teaching him vigilance without panic, a lesson her past had demanded repeatedly. Maya's thoughts raced back to her SEAL training. Years of missions in hostile territories had taught her that the first attack is rarely the last. Intelligence, preparation, and control were the keys to survival. She began to map out the situation. Ray's was alive, aware of her location, and his operatives had already proven willing to attack in broad daylight. This meant he had both motive and capability to escalate. Maya's instincts told her that the threat would intensify, and she needed a plan that accounted for every possible contingency. Detective Ford studied her closely, noting the subtle signs of her experience. The way she carried herself, the calm precision in her movements, and the strategic positioning of Evan all spoke of someone who had been in life-or-death situations before. Ford knew he was dealing with more than a mother protecting her child. He was witnessing a trained operative at work. "We can provide protection," he said cautiously. "Security details, surveillance, relocation if necessary." Maya shook her head, though her tone remained calm. "That's a temporary solution. Ray's won't stop until he achieves his objective. He's methodical, patient, and ruthless. Protection alone won't be enough. I need to handle this before it escalates." Ford's eyes widened slightly, realizing the gravity of her statement. He had seen determined law enforcement officers fail against well-prepared criminals, but Maya's confidence carried a weight he couldn't ignore. She led Evan toward the car, her mind working at full speed. Every movement was deliberate. She needed to leave the scene, assess the situation, and plan her next steps without drawing unnecessary attention. Ray's network was vast, and any miscalculation could endanger her son. The ordinary suburban streets now felt like a chessboard of potential threats, and she had to anticipate every move. As they drove away, Maya reflected on the past. Ray's had been one of the most dangerous criminals she had encountered during her SEAL years. His operations were global, his reach extensive, and his ruthlessness unparalleled. She had dismantled his network once, but she had always known that criminals like him never truly disappear. They bide their time, adapt, and exploit weakness. Her peaceful life had been an illusion, a fragile layer over a history that refused to stay buried. Evan, sensing her tension but too young to fully grasp it, chattered about mundane things. The cereal he had chosen, a funny commercial on TV, and the promise of ice cream after errands. Maya listened, smiling faintly, but her mind was far from the ordinary. Her training demanded constant vigilance. Even in the calm moments, her senses remained alert, scanning for patterns, detecting anomalies, and preparing for the possibility that Ray's operatives could strike again. That night after Evan was asleep, Maya sat alone at her kitchen table, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the quiet house. She reviewed the incident mentally, replaying every moment. The initial sight of the SUV, the attacker's coordinated approach, her rapid response, and the subsequent restraint of the men. Every detail mattered. Every movement had been a calculated action designed to protect her son and control the scene. Her thoughts then turned to Ray's. If he had the audacity to send operatives in broad daylight, he had a plan in motion, and it was likely far more complex than a simple abduction. He would be watching, analyzing, and preparing to escalate. Maya knew she needed intelligence, preparation, and a counter-strategy. She had resources from her past life, old contacts, surveillance networks, tactical tools, and she began plotting how to use them effectively without drawing attention. Maya's phone buzzed. It was a secure message from an old SEAL contact. She opened it carefully, scanning the information. The message contained intel on movements linked to Ray's, remaining network, recent communication patterns, and potential safe houses. Maya's pulse quickened with a mixture of determination and urgency. The threat was real, immediate, and growing. But she also felt a familiar clarity, the clarity of a trained operator preparing for the inevitable confrontation. She knew one thing for certain: Ray's underestimated her. He had assumed she was just a civilian, a mother unprepared for combat or strategic thinking. He had been wrong. She had protected her son, neutralized operatives, and maintained control in a high-risk situation without collateral damage. Ray's next move would be critical, and she would be ready. Maya's thoughts turned to Evan. He needed normalcy, even in the shadow of danger. She would protect him physically and emotionally, shielding him from fear while teaching resilience and vigilance. The training she had received as a SEAL was rigorous, but the lessons were transferable to her role as a mother. Survival required mental fortitude, situational awareness, and preparation. Evan needed to understand these lessons subtly, without losing his childhood. As dawn approached, Maya felt a resolve harden within her. She would not allow Ray's to threaten her family, and she would confront whatever came next with precision, discipline, and determination. The grocery store attack had been a warning, a test, and a prelude. Now she would take control of the situation fully. She would protect Evan, dismantle Ray's plans, and ensure that the past did not dictate the future. In the quiet of her home, Maya allowed herself one deep breath, then exhaled slowly. Her mind was already running through possible scenarios, contingency plans, and tactical responses. Every tool at her disposal, every skill honed over years of training, was ready. The past had returned to challenge her, but she was no ordinary mother. She was a warrior, a protector, and a Navy SEAL prepared to face any threat. And somewhere in the shadows, Ray's was already moving, unaware that the woman he had targeted had transformed from a civilian mother into an unstoppable force of strategy, skill, and unyielding resolve. Maya's son slept peacefully, unaware of the battles that would soon unfold. But Maya knew one truth above all. She would face the storm head-on, and she would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Maya Brooks' home, casting narrow beams across the kitchen floor. The quiet suburban neighborhood belied the storm that had already erupted, and the one still brewing. Maya moved methodically, checking doors, windows, and every possible entry point. Her Navy SEAL training dictated vigilance at all times, and she was hyper-aware of the shadow of Ray's looming somewhere beyond her immediate perception. Evan, oblivious to the intricacies of danger, busied himself with a drawing pad, sketching colorful characters and fantastical battles. Maya glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. She needed this semblance of normalcy for him, even as her mind raced through tactical possibilities. Today's events had made one thing crystal clear. Ray's reach extended beyond the three men at the grocery store. This was only a fragment of a larger plan. Detective Alan Ford arrived promptly, carrying folders filled with intelligence and preliminary reports. "Maya," he said, his voice low, "we've been reviewing the attackers' backgrounds. They're part of an organized network tied directly to Ray's. The man has influence over multiple operations across the country: kidnappings, trafficking, arms. He's professional, calculating, and extremely patient." Maya absorbed the information silently, nodding. Patience and calculation were hallmarks of her own training, traits she respected, but had learned to counteract. She traced her fingers across a map of the city laid out on the kitchen table. Locations, safe houses, and known patterns emerged from the folders Ford provided. "He's testing defenses, probing weaknesses, and gathering intelligence," Maya said. Her voice was steady, deliberate. "The grocery store incident wasn't a random strike, it was reconnaissance. They wanted to see how I respond, gauge my reactions, and possibly flush me out." Ford's eyes widened, realizing the full implications. Maya's analysis was precise. This was not a single attack, but the beginning of an orchestrated plan. Evan peeked around the corner. "Mom, are they going to come back?" he asked softly. Maya knelt, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "We're ready," she said firmly, meeting his eyes. "No one is going to hurt us, but we have to stay smart, stay aware, and follow the plan." His trust in her was complete, built not only on her care as a mother, but also on the undeniable proof he had witnessed of her skill and courage. Maya turned back to the map, her mind racing through tactical scenarios. She needed information, real-time intel on Ray's network, movements, and operatives. Contacting former SEAL allies was the fastest route, but it carried risks. Ray's network was vast, and alerting too many people could compromise her position. She would need precision, discretion, and strategy. Every move had to be calculated, every action deliberate. Ford leaned against the counter, watching her work. "You've clearly trained for situations like this," he said quietly. "I've seen a lot in my career, but you're on another level." Maya's eyes didn't waver. "Training is only part of it. Experience teaches you the rest. Anticipation, timing, control, protecting someone requires more than reflexes. It requires planning, strategy, and patience. Ray's will try to predict my moves. I won't let him." Hours passed as Maya and Ford cross-referenced intelligence reports, vehicle registrations, and communication intercepts. Patterns began to emerge. Small, seemingly random movements, suspicious activity near certain neighborhoods, and traces of communication that hinted at Ray's operatives preparing for a larger strike. Maya's instincts, sharpened by years in high-stakes missions, told her that this was more than just a minor attack. It was a prelude to something bigger, something that could escalate rapidly if she didn't act first. As night fell, Maya made the decision to implement a proactive strategy. She couldn't wait for Ray's to strike again. She had to intercept, gather information, and neutralize threats before they reached her son. Using encrypted communications and old SEAL contacts, she began tracking movements, identifying key operatives, and assessing risk zones. Every piece of information was a potential lifeline. Every delay could mean danger. Evan, sensing the tension in the air, asked quietly, "Mom, will we be okay?" Maya held his gaze, squeezing his hand. "Yes," she said firmly. "We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be ready, I promise." He nodded, comforted by the unwavering confidence in her voice. She allowed him a small portion of normal life, a story, a bedtime routine, the warmth of comfort, even as her mind remained a step ahead of the threats that loomed. Later that night, Maya received an encrypted message from a former SEAL ally. Intercepted communications indicated that Ray's was moving resources and personnel closer to her city. The network was growing, coordinating, preparing for an escalation. Maya's pulse quickened, but her breathing remained controlled. She had anticipated escalation. She had trained for far worse. Now it was time to act decisively, to use her knowledge, skill, and strategy to take control of the situation before Reyes could act. She gathered her gear quietly in a small, inconspicuous bag. Tactical flashlights, compact communication devices, tracking tools essentials for surveillance and rapid response. Every item had a purpose, every decision calculated. This was not reckless action. It was preparation, discipline, and planning executed with precision. Maya's training ensured she was ready for multiple contingencies. She would move carefully, observe, and strike only when the opportunity was undeniable. The night was still, yet Maya felt the undercurrent of movement, the subtle presence of a network preparing to act. Reyes' operatives were out there, gathering information, watching patterns, testing defenses. Maya's mind ran through possible entry points, escape routes, and tactical positions. She would use the environment, the terrain, and intelligence to her advantage. Every step would be deliberate, every action deliberate, every decision designed to maintain control. Evan slept, unaware of the full scope of the danger. Maya glanced at him, her resolve hardening. He was her priority, her mission, and her reason for doing whatever it took. Reyes may have thought he was preparing for an easy confrontation, but Maya had trained for unpredictability, for chaos, and for the kind of danger that required absolute precision. The battle ahead would test every skill, every ounce of experience, and every instinct she had honed over years of rigorous training. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Maya reviewed the intelligence one final time. Reyes' network was tightening, consolidating resources and preparing for a calculated escalation. Maya would be ready. She had no intention of waiting passively for the threat to reach her door. Every move would be preemptive, strategic, and executed with the efficiency of a trained operative. She would strike first, observe second, and protect her son above all else. In the stillness of the night, Maya's gaze fell on the small trident tattoo on her forearm. It glimmered subtly in the low light, a reminder of the skills, experience, and determination she carried within her. Reyes had awakened a past she had hoped to leave behind, but she was no longer the civilian he believed her to be. She was a mother, a protector, and a Navy SEAL prepared to face threats far greater than 3 men in a grocery store. And as she prepared to move against Reyes' network, Maya understood the reality of the coming confrontation. It would be strategic, dangerous, and relentless. But she was ready. She had the training, the skills, and the resolve to face whatever came next. Reyes may have thought he was in control, but Maya Brooks was already several steps ahead. The night was quiet, deceptively peaceful. Maya Brooks stood in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, her eyes scanning every corner, every potential threat. Evan was safely hidden with a trusted family friend in a secure location, unaware of the full extent of the operation but trusting his mother implicitly. Maya's training had taught her that in moments like this, patience, observation, and timing were as lethal as weapons. Reyes' operatives were moving tonight, she could feel it, and she would confront them on her terms. The warehouse was dimly lit by flickering overhead lights, casting long, jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Maya moved silently, her body a study in controlled precision. Every sound, every movement was catalogued instantly by her trained senses. This was the culmination of days of intelligence gathering, strategy, and preparation. She knew that Reyes' men were armed, trained, and desperate, but she also knew that she was more prepared than any one of them could anticipate. A faint metallic sound echoed in the distance. Maya froze, muscles tensing instinctively. Her eyes caught the reflection of flashlights bouncing off walls. Reyes' operatives had arrived, likely expecting an easy confrontation. They had no idea she was waiting, watching, calculating. She allowed them to move closer, using their overconfidence against them. In her mind, every possible scenario played out, every angle covered. This was no longer about defense. It was about taking control and ending the threat before it reached her family. The first operative entered the main chamber, flashlight cutting through the darkness. Maya's eyes tracked him silently. One fluid movement, a perfectly timed strike, and he was incapacitated before he could react. His weapon clattered to the floor, spinning uselessly across the concrete. The other men froze, unsure where the attack had come from. Maya's presence was unseen, yet unmistakably lethal. Panic replaced their arrogance instantly. From her vantage point, she observed the second operative moving cautiously, scanning for threats. Maya used the shadows to her advantage, slipping silently behind a stack of crates. She grabbed a heavy metal pipe, using it with controlled force to knock him unconscious. The sound echoed through the warehouse, but it carried authority, not chaos. Each action was deliberate, minimizing risk while maximizing control. Ray's men realized quickly that they had underestimated her entirely. The third operative tried to retreat, but Maya anticipated the move. Her trained reflexes, honed over years of life-or-death scenarios, allowed her to intercept him with minimal movement. A swift maneuver and he was immobilized, struggling against a grip far stronger and more precise than he could resist. Fear dominated the operatives' expressions now. They had come seeking control, intimidation, and perhaps elimination of a civilian target, and instead, they faced a predator in every sense. Maya's mind remained focused, scanning for the leader, Ray's himself. The intelligence she had gathered over days indicated he might arrive personally to oversee this operation. She considered every angle, every potential trap. Ray's was cunning, ruthless, and patient. He would not act recklessly, but he had underestimated her. That error would cost him. A sudden sound near the rear entrance made her pivot. Ray's had arrived, flanked by two of his most trusted operatives. He exuded calm confidence, clearly expecting to assert dominance. Maya's heart rate remained steady. She had trained for moments like this, where split-second decisions determined life or death. She slipped silently into a position of advantage, using shadows and debris for cover, ready to strike at the optimal moment. Ray's voice cut through the darkness, smooth and commanding. "Maya Brooks," he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. "I expected someone less capable, but I see you've grown in skill." Maya's lips curved slightly, unamused. "You underestimated me," she said evenly. "That was your first mistake." The tension between them crackled like electricity. Ray's operatives tensed beside him, aware that they had underestimated her skill and presence. Without warning, Maya launched into action. Every movement was precise, controlled, and devastatingly effective. The two operatives flanking Ray's were neutralized before they could react. Each strike was calculated, incapacitating without unnecessary violence, but with the efficiency of someone who had faced combat countless times. Ray's froze momentarily, realizing that his confidence had blinded him. Maya was no ordinary opponent. She was a force refined by experience, training, and the unyielding instinct to protect her son. Ray's expression shifted from amusement to determination. "You've grown," he said coldly, drawing a concealed weapon. Maya's reflexes kicked in instantly. She used a combination of speed, agility, and tactical precision to disarm him, twisting his wrist and redirecting the weapon harmlessly across the floor. His arrogance faltered. He realized that underestimating her was his gravest mistake. Every calculated move he had made to control the situation had been anticipated, countered, and nullified. The confrontation reached its climax in a tense, silent standoff. Maya's eyes locked on Ray's, unwavering. His operatives lay incapacitated and the warehouse was hers to control. She advanced slowly, maintaining discipline, every movement signaling dominance without chaos. "It ends tonight," she said firmly. Ray's lips tightened, understanding the inevitability. His reach, his power, his resources, none of it could match her precision, focus, and determination in this decisive moment. Detective Ford, having tracked Maya's movements via surveillance, arrived silently at a safe distance. His presence was a precaution, a way to ensure that backup could intervene if necessary. But he did not interfere. He knew Maya could handle this. He had seen her control chaos before, and he trusted her instincts implicitly. The final confrontation was hers, a reckoning for years of preparation, strategy, and training. With a swift but controlled movement, Maya neutralized Ray's final attempt to resist. Her experience in hand-to-hand combat and tactical disarmament ensured he was incapacitated without unnecessary injury. The warehouse fell silent, save for the faint hum of machinery and distant city noises. Ray's network had been dismantled, his operatives neutralized, and his personal threat contained. Maya exhaled, allowing herself a brief moment of relief. She had protected her son, neutralized the immediate threat, and asserted control over the situation completely. The culmination of intelligence gathering, preparation, and training had led to this decisive victory. Evan's safety was guaranteed, at least for now. The next morning, Maya returned home to a quiet house. Evan ran to her, hugging her tightly. "Mom, you did it," he whispered. Maya knelt, holding him close. "We did it," she corrected gently, "and we'll always protect each other." In his eyes, she saw admiration, trust, and the quiet realization that his mother was extraordinary, a protector beyond measure. Detective Ford called from the perimeter. Reyes and his operatives were in custody, the threat neutralized, and intelligence suggested the network would be disrupted permanently. Maya knew this was only temporary. Criminals like Reyes were patient and shadows of the past lingered, but she was ready. She had the skills, the experience, and the resolve to face any threat. Evan followed her to the window, watching the police vehicles take Reyes and his men away. "Will they come back?" he asked. Maya smiled gently, brushing his hair from his face. "Not if we stay prepared," she said, "but if they do, we'll be ready." He nodded, comforted by her calm authority. For him, today had been terrifying, transformative, and unforgettable. As the sun rose over the quiet suburb, Maya reflected on the journey from the sudden attack in the grocery store to the decisive showdown in the warehouse. Her past as a Navy SEAL had shaped her, honed her skills, and prepared her for this very moment. But above all, it had reinforced a truth she already knew. She would protect her son at any cost. Maya's gaze fell on the small trident tattoo on her forearm, glimmering in the morning light. It symbolized her training, her experience, and her unyielding determination. Reyes had challenged her, and she had emerged victorious. But more importantly, she had safeguarded the most precious part of her life, her son. In the quiet aftermath, life slowly returned to normal. Groceries were restocked, streets were calm, and Evan laughed and played without fear. Maya watched him, alert yet relaxed, aware that vigilance would always be necessary but comfort was equally important. The balance of protection and normalcy was delicate, but it was one she had mastered. And in that moment, Maya Brooks knew a profound truth. Being a mother and being a warrior were not mutually exclusive. She could love fiercely, protect relentlessly, and face danger with unwavering courage. Rey's network may have cast a shadow, but she had reclaimed her light and her son's safety. The past had tested her, but she had triumphed, and her future, though vigilant, was secure.